Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today I would like to present my problem-based learning assignment, and the topic that has been given to me are the main phases of the moon and analyze how the tides occur. So before we start, may I introduce myself? My name is HAZWANI Ateera binti HISHAM, matric number 1181406. So before we go through further about the topic, I would like to explain first about the introduction of the topic. So basically, in my research, the moon, in many ways, it can be defined as a prototypical of a substantial fraction of the object in the solar system, which is like many other moons and planets. The moon exhibits a heavily cratered surface that preserve a history of internal geological activity. For example, as we will see, the moon is also a truly bizarre object, which is unrepresentative of most other objects in the solar system. So next, the characteristic of the moon. Basically, our moon is a small rocky satellite, and it has extreme of temperature, virtually no atmosphere or life, and a very little water. And the moon also having about 1/4 the diameter of Earth and 1/18 its mass compared to the Earth. And also the moon has an equatorial diameter, which is 1738.1 kilometers, and a polar diameter of 1736 kilometers. So the main phases of the moon that we will discuss in this video, the first one will be the new moon, then will be followed by the first quarter, the full moon, and the last one is the last quarter phase. Next, we will also discuss about the tide ocean, on how the tides actually occur. So, as a definition, an ocean tides refers to the cyclic rise and fall of seawater, which is caused by slight variation in gravitational attraction between the Earth and the Moon and also the Sun. And the daily cycle of the tides driven by the gravitational pull of the Moon and the Sun. So as the Earth rotates, the tides move around the Earth, alternating between the high and the low tides. And also the tidal range is called as the difference, to show the difference in height between high tide and the low tide. Next, I will mention about the research problem of this study. So, what is the purpose of this study? The purpose is to examine how subjects set up, transforms, and reason with models that scientists usually establish on the basis of known facts, as they seek to explain a familiar everyday phenomenon, which is the phases of the moon and how the tides occur. It is because some people didn't actually know the reason or how the phases of the moon and the tides actually occurred. Some people think that the phases of the moon occur because the Earth's shadow falls on the moon. Although the study of the tides can be complex, the tides are actually fundamentally very long and regular shallow water waves. So aside from the types of the tides, the tide generating force also influence on how the tides occur differently at certain times. So in this video also we will try to clarify below the basic ideas underlying on the tidal forcing. So that is why other purpose of this study research also to include the explanation of the origin of the forcing terms responsible for causing the tidal record features that has been described above, and also to explain the derivation of the tide generating potential. Now we will go through the discussion and finding of the research. So, as a definition, Moon is defined as the Earth's natural satellite that shine by the sun's reflected light, which revolves about the Earth around the Earth from the east to the west. The Moon is orbiting the planet Earth of the inner solar system as Earth's only natural satellite. The Moon, also known as a rocky silicate composition and without significant atmosphere or hydrosphere or any magnetic field. So basically, the Moon is a gravity-rounded astronomical body of planetary mass. So as you can see, the picture show that the Moon, the Sun and the Earth and how their orbit works. So you can see that the Moon is orbiting the Earth while the Earth orbiting the Sun at the same time. And the Moon revolves around the Earth about once every month. The Moon appears to rise in the east and will set in the west. So the phases of the Moon that we will discuss is caused by its position relative to Earth and the Sun. So the phases of the Moon contain of 4 different principal phases. The first one is the new moon, the second one is the first quarter, and the third one is the full moon, and the last one is the last quarter phase. So as you can see, the picture shows how the phases of the moon change in its shape from different time, which is from hours to hours. And we can see that the phases start with the new moon and will be end with the third quarter or the waning crescent. So the moon apparently appears to have different phases because we see more or less of the lighted side of the moon depending on where it is with respect to the sun. So the moon rotates at the same rate as it orbits the earth. So the period of its spin equals the period of its orbit. So when the spin and orbital periods are correlated, it is called a synchronous orbit. So that is for the phases of the moon. Now we will move to the how the tides occur. Okay, so now tides are defined as the rise and fall of sea level which caused by the combined effects of the gravitational forces. So tides vary on time scale ranging from hours to years due to a number of factors which determine the lunitidal interval. Usually the tides are the largest source of short-term sea level fluctuation. Tides are the periodic rising and lowering of average sea level that occurs throughout the ocean. So in this research, I divided the tides into 2 different types, which is the first one is the spring tides and the second one is the neap tides. So next, I will explain for the first one, which is the spring tides. Spring tides usually occur during the new and full moon phase, and it will make the greatest range of tides. And usually spring tides occur twice in each synodic month due to the approximate alignment of the Sun, Moon and Earth. Meanwhile, the neap tides occur during the first and the third quarter moon phases, which will make the smallest range of the tidal range. So, same with the spring tides, the neap tide also occur twice in each synodic month due to the Sun, the Earth, and the Moon forming right angle to each other. Gravity is, in addition, gravity is one major force that creates tides. So back in 1687, Sir Isaac Newton explained that ocean tides result from the gravitational attraction of the Sun and Moon on the ocean of the Earth. So um, tidal forces are based on the gravitational attractive force, and the figure shown below is the tidal range is the different tidal range of spring tide and neap tides. So as you can see, the spring tides is making the largest tidal range during the full and the new moon, while the neap tides making the smallest tidal range during the first and the third quarter moon. And aside of that, there are mean sea level that influence the tides. Mean sea level, or MS, or known as MSL, is the average level of low tides in a coastal region that has been used to define standard elevation, starting at 0.0 feet or 0.0 meters above or below sea level as shown on topographic or bathymetric maps. Okay, now we already at the ending of the video. So for the conclusion and recommendation, I divided in two different topics, which is for our topic for today. So the first one is the conclusion for the tides. So simplistically, the gravitational attraction of the Sun and Moon on Earth will create the ocean tides, or the different size of the tides. So in a more complete analysis, tides are generated by forces which impose on Earth that are caused by a combination of gravity and motion among the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. So further is very recommended for people actually to learn about this tide, because the knowledge of the tide is very important in many coastal activities. For example, the activity that involve with the tide is the shell collecting, surfing, fishing, navigation, and also important for the fishermen to preparing for the upcoming storms. So the next one is the next for the phases of the moon. The phases of the moon also affect tides. It is because when the moon is at its full phases, or during the new moon phases, the high tides are at their highest, while the low tides are lower than usual. So when the moon is at perigee, or the closest point in its orbit around the Earth, the tides can also be affected. And for this knowledge, the moon's appearance actually helps people to know what phase the moon is in, and where the position of the moon is compared to the sun. So it is better to learn more about the moon, to know the phase compared to the sun. And that's all from me. So I hope I have give you a little bit of knowledge about this topic for today. So thank you.